Good day, friends, allies, enemies, it matters not. This is all from Donald Trump's contract with the American voter. He moves on. Next, I will work with Congress to introduce the following broader legislative measures and fight for their passage within the first 100 days of my administration. So these are acts he wants to push through Congress. First is his Middle Class Tax Relief and Simplification Act. It's an economic plan designed to grow the economy 4% per year. It's obviously a projection. We know that. And create at least 25 million new jobs through massive tax reduction and simplification, in combination with trade reform, regulatory relief, and lifting the restrictions on American energy. The largest tax reductions are for the middle class. A middle-class family with 2 children will get a 35% tax cut. The current number of brackets will be reduced from 7 to 3, and tax forms will likewise be greatly simplified. The business rate will be lowered from 35 to 15%, and the trillions of dollars of American corporate money overseas can now be brought back at a 10% rate. That was all the plan right there. What does it all mean? Well, everybody wants simpler taxes and less of them. That's great. There's a lot of questions, though. If this is to benefit the middle class the most, why is most of the cutting going to businesses? Oh yeah, trickle down. Yeah. Good luck, middle class. Your tax relief is dependent on the rich passing savings on to you in an Ayn Rand America where that is hardly in their interest. To put those tax brackets into better perspective, a middle class tax break of 35% on an estimated tax bracket that's actually 25% would be 16.5% still. That's not bad, but corporations dropping from their 35% bracket to a 15% bracket is a drop of 57%. All of this also means much less coming into the government's coffers, and considering how hard a time politicians have cutting existing spending and the cost of Trump's new plans, many of which we've already covered, deficits will be huge. Even if the trickle-down and potential economic growth actually work, it will be years before the inbound taxes recover. And you thought Obama and his Congresses ran up the debt. His next plan, his next congressional plan, end the Offshoring Act. That's not end the act that is called the Offshoring Act. That is an act called End the Offshoring Act. It's getting a little touchy here, but it establishes tariffs to discourage companies from laying off their workers in order to relocate in other countries and ship their products back to the U.S. tax-free. A lot of companies do this, and it is a problem. Twice in the Obama years, Democrats tried to do this and were crushed before the bills ever had a chance. They were the Offshoring Prevention Act of 2013, and prior to that, the Creating American Jobs and Ending Offshoring Act of 2010. Both had different issues than this one probably will. But overall, I guess the GOP just wanted to do it themselves? It's unlikely. Expect this to get a push, but miraculously it will die in committee, and the GOP will blame obstructionist Democrats. If the GOP does proceed, wording and side effects will be key as always. I'll keep an eye on this one for you. We'll dig into the details as soon as we have more. His next act is the American Energy and Infrastructure Act. It leverages public-private partnerships and private investments through tax incentives to spur $1 trillion in infrastructure investment over 10 years. It is revenue neutral. Let me read that again. The American Energy and Infrastructure Act leverages public-private partnerships and private investments through tax incentives to spur $1 trillion in infrastructure investment over 10 years. If you are wanting me to explain that sentence to you, we're both going to need medical marijuana. Actual details have been conveniently left out, so we are to assume this is a huge tax incentive to encourage infrastructure investment. This will have to be made into a bill instead of a questionable sentence, and then run through a major loophole detector prior to any further commentary. It is nice they are assuring us it is revenue neutral. As much as assuming as we have to do to figure out this act, they've done even more to convince themselves of that last statement. Sometimes convoluted infrastructure statements hide other words, like toll road, toll bridge. But that's just a guess. Next is the School Choice and Education Opportunity Act. This redirects education dollars to give parents the right to send their kid to the public, private, charter, magnet, religious, or home school of their choice. It ends Common Core, brings education supervision to local communities. It expands vocational and technical education and makes 2- and 4-year college more affordable. Wasn't that nice? So much hope in those statements, and so little explanation how we do it. We're going to need a lot more information. If we extrapolate problems from just what is here, we are sure to see an expensive federal voucher program, a limit on access to the better schools, and a complete collapse of struggling public schools. Also, can't wait for them to argue the resulting segregation and inequality between schools is actually based on choice. Next up is the Repeal and Replace Obamacare Act. This is huge because it feels like a large percentage of his base was screaming to kill Obamacare. Second, maybe third behind build the wall and lock her up. The Repeal and Replace Obamacare Act fully repeals Obamacare and replaces it with health savings accounts, the ability to purchase health insurance across state lines, and let states manage Medicaid funds. Reforms will also include cutting the red tape at the FDA. There are over 4,000 drugs awaiting approval, and we especially want to speed the approval of life-saving medications. That was the encapsulation of what he wants. A full repeal of Obamacare, let's be clear about this, a full repeal of Obamacare would allow insurers to reinstate pre-existing conditions, so the new plan had better address that. Trump has since said there are aspects to the Affordable Care Act that he will probably keep, and I think this may be the big one. Health savings accounts are a detour on insurance reform and a way to change the conversation, but not an effective solution. Purchasing health care not targeted to your community will get many people more savings in the short term, but create a balancing that will see the premiums level out to a new national level, subject to increases based on problems not natural to your area. No incentive for areas of the country to continue living healthier if they are all treated the same. FDA red tape cutting sounds good to many people, but remember that when more people start running up our healthcare costs or even dying from side effects that weren't properly assessed. Next, he has Affordable Child Care and Elder Care Act. It allows Americans to deduct child care and elder care from their taxes, incentivizes employers to provide on-site child care services, and creates tax-free dependent care savings accounts for both young and elderly dependents, with matching contributions for low-income families. If this were being proposed by a Democrat, all we'd hear is, how are you going to fund all that socialism? This one is a Melania-backed plan, I'm sure, and therefore will probably go on the pile that doesn't get done, blaming obstructionist Democrats for its failure. Next, he wants the End Illegal Immigration Act, which, if it's already illegal, means it's already illegal, and okay, but the End Illegal Immigration Act fully funds the construction of a wall on our southern border with the full understanding that the country Mexico will be reimbursing the United States for the full cost of such wall. It establishes a 2-year mandatory minimum federal prison sentence for illegally re-entering the U.S. after a previous deportation, and a 5-year mandatory minimum for illegally re-entering for those with felony convictions, multiple misdemeanor convictions, or 2 or more prior deportations. It also reforms visa rules to enhance penalties for overstaying and to ensure open jobs are offered to American workers first. American workers first. Let's remember that part. Money. Big money. Up front. Reimbursed by Mexico, which elsewhere on his websites has been proposed by heavy taxes on money being outbound transferred to Mexico if the Mexican government doesn't honor the bill. The wall should also be a separate video, especially since there is already talk of backing off the concept of an actual wall. The other part of this is all about mandatory prison sentencing, ensuring we fill all those privatized jails that will have to be built, and somehow ensuring that corporations that are already whining about too many regulations now accept a new one about hiring any available American workers before accepting even legal visa visitors. What a mess. This isn't immigration reform, it's immigration destruction. His next one is the Restoring Community Safety Act. It reduces surging crime, drugs, and violence by creating a task force on violent crime and increasing funding for programs that train and assist local police. Increases resources for federal law enforcement agencies and federal prosecutors to dismantle criminal gangs and put violent offenders behind bars. A task force. That'll do it. Thanks very much. Yeah. Given previous comments, stop and frisk will probably be one of the resources mentioned in that last part there. There is no doubt the mentioning of gangs is heavily leaning toward black and Hispanic communities. I'm very interested, in fact, to see if any Aryan and biker-type gangs get the same attention. Greater police training is awesome, unless you totally ignore the social aspect of educating against the shoot-first mentality, which, since it is not mentioned, I'm reasonably sure you are ignoring. This is more of the same that we've seen during and since Reagan. There's no real change here, except a costly task force. Next up, the Restoring National Security Act rebuilds our military by eliminating the defense sequester and expanding military investment, provides veterans with the ability to receive public VA treatment or attend the private doctor of their choice, protects our vital infrastructure from cyber attack, establishes new screening procedures for immigration to ensure those who are admitted to our country support our people and our values. You may have caught that word in the first sentence, the sequester. The sequester is an automatic spending limit created by trying to slow the growth of the debt, since no one has the balls to make tough decisions and actually choose to cut spending in a given place. This has affected the military greatly by constraining the development and introduction of expensive new technologies among its regular spending problems. Trump is fully in support of expanding the military, apparently, and wants to open the purse for the military-industrial complex. Crony capitalism politics at its best. This gets quickly hidden behind the second part focusing on Veterans Affairs. VA reform is crucial for our former soldiers, and allowing them to seek local doctors and treatments is an expensive but freedom-based solution. Ultimately, it sounds like he would just like to eliminate the VA hospital system and give veterans a type of single-payer Medicare coverage. This directly leads to more conversation about doing that for all of America, and because of that fear and that conversation, the VA situation won't change much. This cybersecurity is a no-brainer, and immigration reform has been covered on its act. So this act is mainly about spend, spend, spend. Republican socialists are awesome, aren't they? Next up, the Clean Up Corruption in Washington Act. This is the one we've all been waiting for. There have to be at least a fourth of Trump's supporters who want clean up Washington. And I'm saying a fourth that's the only reason they voted for him. Even the other 3/4 may have had that as one of their reasons. But there has got to be at least a fourth of people that said, you know, I can't vote for these other people because I really want to clean up corruption in Washington and I don't care anything else. So this act has to be great, right? It's an act. Enacts new ethics reforms to drain the swamp and reduce the corrupting influence of special interests on our politics. That's all it says. That's not an act. That's a vague claim that you might do something someday. Unfortunately, there is nothing new or draining about his proposals. Given the multiple sources for his lists on this subject and the alternatives I'd like to propose for him, we'll do all of that in a video later. He wraps up by saying this is his pledge to us, and if we allow these changes, we'll be back to a government of, by, and for the people. As presented to us, though, these plans are incomplete at best and incompetent at worst. But this is his pledge, and this is what the voters chose. So our first duty is to hold him to these promises. Then we can start to see if he is at least a man of his word. Thereafter, we need to prevent mistakes that future voters cannot change, limit any harm done to individuals or the economy, and show him what else America needs done to guide him toward it. We plan to be here through all of that. And we'll do it through actual policy. Even in ways that I don't like Trump, it's not important, it's not necessary to attack an individual. We must talk about the policies. This has been Constant Vigil for the day. Good night, thank you, and may your gods go with you.